Hi, I'm going to demonstrate things you need to know for your next project, and namely I'm going to show you how to create an image map and also how to create tables and relationships in SQL Server. So starting out, I have a folder, and in it I have a copy of the ERD that I demonstrated in class, and I also have a spreadsheet that I've created that has a listing of attributes for one of the entities in the ERD. And so I'm going to begin by opening up this Word document, trying to scroll and scale the diagram to the extent that we can see everything. Okay, so there's the diagram, and I can see most everything except these cardinalities, so I may have to live with that. The next thing I want to do then is transform this image into a picture, so and save it in either a PNG file format or a JPEG file format, and I'll probably save it as PNG. Either one of those work, either one are fine for what we're trying to do. So I have the standard Windows tool for snipping screenshots. It's the snipping tool, so if you need to, you can search for it. Just search for snipping tool, you'll find it. Then I'm going to carefully try to crop this in a way that I minimize as much white space around the edges as I can. And then I'm going to save this as a file. So again, in my file system, I already have a folder set up for this project. And I'm just going to name this ERD, and it's attempting to save it as a JPEG file. JPEG file is fine. I can either use JPEG or PNG. And at this point I'm done with the snipping tool, and I'm actually done with Word as well. So I'll close that up, and I'm going to then use an HTML generator, and I'm going to use Expression Web because that's what I have installed here, and that's available to you if you want to use it. It's available as a free download, or I also have it on DVD. And I'll go ahead and put in some kind of heading up here. So I don't care what you use as a heading, or even if you actually have a heading. I'm going to go ahead and do this though, and maybe increase the font size a little bit. Let's see what kind of font I can find here that looks interesting. Okay, so I have an appropriate heading up here, and I'm going to then insert the picture, and I'll leave the alignment centered when I insert the picture. So I'm going to insert the picture from File and navigate to where that picture is. So if you know anything about HTML, HTML5 requires that you provide an alt attribute on an image tag, and the image tag is the means by which this image is going to be imported into this page. So I'll just put, something like ERD. And say OK. At that point, I have my picture inserted into the web page, and then I'm going to save this web page. And I'll rename this web page ERD. Okay, so I've got a JPEG file by the name of ERD, and I've got a HTML file by the name of ERD, but the file name extensions differ. And again, I have to navigate to where I want to save this. Now, if I'd have been on my game, I would have gotten rid of some of these little squigglies. Didn't notice that until right now. But at this point, I've inserted the picture into the web page. So I'm going to take a look at the code just to make sure that the file path is correct. Okay, so really, I should have saved the web page before inserting that picture. Sometimes you get into trouble with that. Okay, so there's the image tag that is created, and the source attribute for that picture is erd.jpg. So if it had put something other than the file name here, it would have been trying to create that with an absolute file path, and I would have wanted to edit that and get rid of all the leading path information. That could have been problematic. This is also trying to create this document in XHTML standard. Okay, so that's not the current standard of HTML, and I think I'll clean this up a little bit. Okay, so doc type HTML should be the way I want that doc type tag to read for HTML5. And then I'll just leave a HTML tag that looks like that. Okay, so now it should recognize that everything from this point on is HTML5, the current HTML standard. And I'll do a save. And it has saved the file again. Alright, so at this point I've created the picture and the web page, and then what I want to do now is create these hyperlinks, but I need to go back into the folder and create yet another image here. Now, as I think about this, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to name this folder Pics, and I would suggest that you do that because you're going to have a lot of picture files as I think about it. You're going to have the picture file for the ERD, and you're also going to have the picture files for each of the attribute listings. Okay, so I have this spreadsheet already created, and I have already inserted in the data that I want here. So we've been through this, you know what this is. And I'm going to use this snipping tool here. And I'm going to need to do this for every entity, but I'll go ahead and create the attribute listings. Now, in case you have comments, you can put those over there, so I want to expand that. And I'm going to create a, I'll save this as a file. and it's attempting to save it in the previous folder, but I want to insert it into this nested folder, and this is going to represent phone attributes. And I'll go ahead and save that, and I think it saves it as a PNG file. I forgot to look. I should look here in a moment. Alright, so I'm done with the spreadsheet, and as I look in that pics folder then, no, it saved it as JPEG. Okay, so again, either JPEG or PNG files work, and there's some advantage to using PNG over JPEG actually, but JPEGs will work fine. Alright, so now I have a file that I can link to, and I'm going to go back to the ERD in Expression Web, and I'm going to create a hotspot on this area of the picture. And to do that, I have to make sure that the picture drawing tools are available. I think that's the toolbar that I want to use, so I don't see them. I go to the View option and choose Toolbars, and there is a Pictures toolbar. Go ahead and select it, and on this Pictures toolbar I've got some tools over in here that I can create hotspots with. So I'm going to click on the picture, and you're going to see the toolbar light up. So if I don't have focus on the picture, the toolbar is grayed out. If I click on the picture, these tools change, and I've got 3 different hotspot tools that I can use over here. Yeah, okay, 3. 1, 2, 3. And since these are rectangular shapes, this is going to be the easiest tool to use. So I'll select it and outline the area on the picture that I want to make a hotspot. And as soon as I release, I'm going to get a dialog box where I can insert a hyperlink, and I'm going to want to hyperlink to the pics folder, and I'm going to want to hyperlink to this file right here. So I'll say OK to that. Now, I'm surprised I'm still seeing that image. I want to look at something here real quick. If I look at the code, you'll see the image map references this file, and relative to this web page, it has to open the pics folder to find the file phone attribs.jpg. Okay, and I want to go up here to the image that we looked at previously, this image right here, and change this source. I'm surprised it's still showing that image. I think if I closed up and opened again, we wouldn't see that image. But I'm going to go ahead and change the file path here to pics slash, okay, because I moved the ERD picture, ERD diagram into that folder called pics as well. And then I'm going to save things again. I'm going to close this up, and I find my web page here in the video demo folder, and if I right click and open this with a browser, and I use Microsoft Edge, I'll try a couple of these. I'll try Microsoft Edge initially. Okay, so I see the web page the way I want it to look, and if I mouse over anything, nothing happens until I mouse over the phone entity, and since I set up a hotspot on it, if I click, it's going to take me to the screenshot of all the attributes that make up the phone entity. So there you have it. That's the way it should look, and that's the way it should work. Now I'll open this one more time in a different browser. So this time I'll open it with, how about Chrome? And that works real well. And again, no hotspot, click, there it is. Okay, so that's a quick demonstration of how you would create the image map, and then I'll continue here in a moment and show you how to use SQL Server. Hi, I'm back again, and I'm going to show you how to create the database in SQL Server. So I've already launched Management Studio, and to create the database I need to go to the object bar and right click on the database folder, choose new database. I'm going to need to give it a name, so I'll call it distributed lib, and then I need to tell it where to save the files for the database. So I have the MDF and LDF files excuse me, that are currently going to be stored in a real obscure file path, and I don't want that. So instead I'm going to save it in a known location in my file system. So I have a folder set up for the database files, and I'll choose that for the MDF file, and I'll also choose the same folder for the LDF file. So both the data file and the log file are going to be stored in the same folder, and I will tell it OK to that. And then when I look in the object bar, I see that there is a new database called distributed lib, and if I expand it, I'll notice that there are no tables, there is no database diagram. So this is just the beginning part of the database structure. And what I want to do is create two tables. So I'm not going to create the entire database, but I'm going to create two tables, and I'm going to refer back to the ERD. I'll create a borrower table and a phone table. And when I create the borrower table, I'm just going to create really the minimal number of columns to make this thing exist, but I will put more work into the phone table. And once I get the two tables created, then I'll have to create the relationship. When I create the relationship, I'll also apply some cascade rules to facilitate referential integrity. And also when I create the phone table, I'm going to apply a check constraint. So I'll make sure that one of the columns can only store certain values. All right. So continuing on here in Management Studio, the first thing I'm going to do is create the borrower table, which is going to be the parent table in this relationship. And so right click on the table folder and select new table, at which point I need to begin naming the columns, specifying the data types, and doing things that you have seen done before in Microsoft Access. So this being the borrower table, I will name the primary key borrower ID. I have a broad range of data types, and for the data type that I want to use with my primary key, I'm going to choose int. And then to make this the equivalent of an auto number field, I need to go into the column properties, find the property labeled full text specification, identity specification. And if I double click on it, I have an option to either say it's an identity column or not. So it's currently set to a non-auto number field, if you will, and I'm going to change that and tell it yes, at which point
It tells me the increment size, so it's going to begin with a initial value, a seed value of 1, and then every row that gets inserted into the table is going to be incremented by 1. So that's what all that's telling me. And finally, I'm going to designate this as a primary key, and you'll see a little icon appear over here. Again, very similar to what we saw in Microsoft Access. And then I'll create another column. And again, I told you I was going to keep this table as minimal as possible, so I'll call it borrower stuff. And I'll choose a data type of InVarChar. Okay, so this is going to be a text field of variable length. And I'll just go ahead and leave, well, I'll change it so you see that can be changed. So this will allow me to store variable length text up to a limit of 25 characters. And then I have to make a decision whether to allow null values or not, and in this case I'll turn that off. So in order for a record to be inserted, there will have to be some text put in this field. And that's enough to make this table exist, so I'm just going to go ahead and save. It's going to prompt me for a table name, which I will call borrower. If I spelled that right, borrower, it looks right, I think. For some reason it looks wrong, but I guess that's right. Okay, so the table's been saved, and I can close this up. Now if I expand the tables folder, nothing shows up. I may have to refresh, so I'm going to right click. I can get this thing to cooperate and refresh, and when I do, I'll see the table exist. Okay, so just a word of caution: when you create a new object in these folders, we'll see this when we work with stored procedures as well. Oftentimes they don't show up immediately. You'll have to manually refresh in order to see the new object that's been inserted. Alright, so I'm going to create my second table then, and choose new table option. This is going to be the phone table. Okay, and again I'll have a phone ID field, and I'll make this again int data type. Same thing as before. I'm going to go down to the column properties and expand identity specification. And then go ahead and change these property values, change that property value to yes, which then will automatically suggest a step size or an increment value and a seed value, and those values can be changed, but I'm not wanting to do that, but it could be changed if that was necessary. Now if we look at the ER diagram, the phone table is a child table with respect to borrower, so it needs to store the borrower primary key value as a foreign key. So coming back here, I'm going to go ahead and put the foreign key in next. And again, this doesn't have to be the same name as the corresponding primary key in the parent table, but if you do that, it makes it a lot clearer as to what's going on. What is necessary is for the data type to be the same as the data type of the primary key field. So since the primary key field was int data type, this needs to be int data type. Then I need to make a decision whether to allow nulls or not. So if I allow null, it'll be possible for a child record to exist without a parent. And as I think about the logic of this in my design, would I ever want a telephone number to exist without there being a corresponding borrower? Doesn't make sense at all. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and tell it not to allow nulls. And before I forget to do this, I'm going to go back and designate phone ID as a primary key. And then I'm going to continue on with the columns that are needed for the phone table. Now, one thing I would point out is this borrower ID field doesn't have to be the field immediately following the primary key, but to make the tables a little more readable and easier to work with, I think it's nice to have all the key fields listed first and then the non-key fields following. So I'm going to continue on with the non-key fields, and one was area. Okay, so I can consult my ERD and look to see what these fields are. Okay, so area was next, then number. And so area. Now I have to consider the best data type to use here, and I'm going to use in-care, which will allow me to create fixed length character strings. And for the area code, I'll change that to a field size of 3. And I don't want to allow nulls. If I'm going to insert a telephone number, I want there to be an area code associated with it. And then we're going to have phone type, phone num. And I'll make it, let's see, if I follow that with the phone number, it would be 3 digits, a dash, and then 4 digits, so I'd want to make this 8. Now if I make it larger than it needs to be, that's okay, other than it's just, a little more efficient to do it this way. And I'm not going to allow nulls there. And if I look back at the ERD, those are the fields that I said I wanted. Those are the data types that I said I wanted. And I shouldn't have closed that up like that. Okay, so it looks like this table is fine. I think what I'm going to do is, so I can show you how to create a check constraint though, is I'm going to go ahead and add a phone type field. Alright, so that's not actually in my design, should have been maybe, but we'll pretend it is, and I'll call this phone type, and I'll let it be a single character. And then, let's see, I have to decide whether I allow nulls, and I think I'll allow nulls just so I can show you this in the check constraint, because this is the column that I'm going to apply a check constraint to. So I'll go ahead and save. In fact, I'll save everything. It's going to want to know a name, and I will call this phone. Tell it OK. Then I can close this table up. And now let's look at how we'd apply a check constraint. So if I go to the table folder, expand it, I'm going to have to refresh it apparently. And on the phone table, if I expand it, I've got a constraint folder, and if I right click on it, I can add a new constraint. And it's been a while since I've done this, so bear with me here. I want to build the expression, so I'll choose expression under general and put in the expression, so that's going to be the phone type column. So I need to specify the column and then say that it is equal to, let's say there's 3 possible values. One would be cell, C is in cell, or excuse me, and I'll copy and paste since I'm such a lousy typist. I'll change that to H as in home. And then I'll add yet a third possibility, or like, or is null. Okay, so I have to use the is operator with null. So let me think about this. Phone type equals C, or phone type equal age, or, and I should say, Control B, phone type is null. Phone type equals C, or phone type equal age, or iPhone. Or phone type is null. Okay, I think I've entered that in correctly, and I'll say okay to that. And then close. Okay, so I put a check constraint on that column, and now it's only going to allow 3 possible values. Uppercase C, uppercase H, or a null value. And I'm going to save the table and exit out of here. So that's the way I create the tables, and then the next step is going to be to create the relationship. So I'm going to go to the database diagrams page, and when I try to expand it with this new database, it gives me this message. Just say yes to that, and I'm going to right click and choose new database diagram, and I'll add both of these tables. Control click here and then add, and then close the dialog, and I've got my 2 tables. So the way you should build your database is to create all the tables, create all the check constraints, okay, and then add all the tables to the diagram and begin creating the relationships. And so I'm going to create the relationships the same way I did in Access, by dragging the parent's primary key over and dropping it on the child's foreign key field. Okay, so didn't recognize that. Not sure what the problem is. Let me try dragging right on the primary key. All right. Trust me, I'm an expert. I know how to do this. This thing, I have no idea why I'm having such a problem. There, finally. Okay, so that should have been a very simple thing to do. So I've dragged and dropped the parent table's primary key onto the child table's foreign key, and having those named the same column names makes it very easy to identify which fields I should be dragging and dropping on. And at this point, I want to say OK. And I'll get a dialog box, at which point I want to add a cascade rule. And in this dialog box for the relationship, I'm going to click on Insert Update Specification, expand that, and it gives me the option for cascade update and cascade delete, or it's going to give me a delete rule from which I can choose cascade delete. So I have some other options here. I can set it equal to null. Okay, so when a parent record is deleted, if I want that child record to exist alone, I can have it set to null, or I can have it set to some other default value, and I've never used that option. I'm not sure how useful that would be, but in this case I had decided that I wanted to apply cascade delete, and this is how I'm going to do it. So at this point, this relationship has referential integrity applied, and I have a cascade delete rule applied to it. And we are at a point where we have, both tables created with the relationship and a check constraint applied. The next step in the process would be to begin adding data to our tables. So if you're doing this for your project, create all the tables, then create the relationships, and then put some sample data in the tables just so you can eventually check it with SQL to make sure everything's working correctly. So I'll conclude by closing up this window and saving the update to the diagram. I'll say yes. Okay, so some of those warnings were not really anything serious. And the next thing I'll do is show how to insert data. So since the parent's primary key value needs to be established before a child record's foreign key value can be determined, then I would want to populate my parent record ahead of my child record or records. So I can populate the table by right-clicking on the table and choosing Edit as an option. So this will allow you to read the content. This will allow you to change it or write to the table. And in this case, that's set up as an identity column, and it should not let me insert anything in here. Okay, so I'm attempting to put a number in. It won't let me. Under borrower stuff, I'll just put record 1, hit the enter key, okay, and just like we saw in Access, as soon as I hit the enter key, it's going to go ahead and populate that auto number field, or what they call an identity column value. And then put in my data in the parent tables ahead of the child tables. Save everything. Now actually I don't need to save. When I insert a record and hit the enter key, it actually writes that record to the database file. So currently everything is saved, and that's basically what you need to know in order to create a database in Microsoft Access.